We are in Greeneville, Tennessee, going to the home place of Andrew Johnson. That's the vice president that became the president after the assassination of Abraham Lincoln and the first president to be impeached. He was impeached because the radicals from the North could not handle that he was not wanting to severely punish the South. They did not comprehend that in order to be friends, you have to have something to offer. We're going to go across the street first, which is where we're at now, from the visitor center and visit this home. In this home, I will be quizzing Tommy too and asking him, how can you tell? Now, Tommy too.
Yes.
Why were the houses built smaller in that time period? Heat. What do you mean by heat?
They use wood for...
Wait, well, they use fire, but what type of fire did they do? Did they just throw it in a buck stove and it distribute the heat evenly? Or did they build it in a fireplace that acted like it was just an outdoor fire? Okay, so it's built in a fireplace like an outdoor fire. Now looking at this, how can you tell the socioeconomic level of the person who owns this home?
Cookware.
How so?
I don't remember exactly, but I know you said something about the cookware being
right.
Like cast iron.
That's cast iron. And what did the time period did they use?
Wasn't that the poor?
It was, no, the poor was cast iron, and then the wealthier would use copper with tin inlays, right? And it distributes the heat more. So the cast iron is this. It's also able to tell because where do you see a cook oven? Do you see a cook oven?
No.
So what are you using to cook with? You're using
The fire.
The fire, which that pot that you see on top hanging up there, that's a Dutch oven. In a Dutch oven, can you bake? Yes. Okay. Now when you put the coals on top of it, if you used copper, what would happen to the copper?
It would
melt.
Yeah.
All right. So they would have actual bread stoves versus what we have here. Now, if you're having an outdoor fire basically on the inside, like we do here, what's the temperature going to be like all the way over here versus up here?
Cooler over here, warmer over here.
So it's warmer over here, cooler over here. Now, why did they put the one door here?
Airflow.
Airflow for what?
The smoking.
For not only the smoke, but what time of year?
Summer.
Summer. Why would they want to put this like this so they can have an airflow? Did they have AC back then?
No.
No. So in essence, all your houses basically would fit inside of the one room of most people's homes now. So most people's homes now are classified as what back then?
Mansions.
Mansions. The traditional story of Andrew Johnson's birthplace is held firmly in place by the preservation of a small historic structure located in Mordecai Park in Raleigh, North Carolina. That small building, probably built in the late 1700s, was part of a complex of buildings known as Casso's Inn, a well-known hotel of the period located in Raleigh. This inn was where Andrew Johnson's father worked as a stable keeper and his mother worked as a weaver. According to tradition, Andrew Johnson was born in the loft of the kitchen at the inn. The story goes that on December 29, 1808, a wedding party was in progress at the tavern when the festivities were interrupted by news of the birth of a baby to the Johnsons. According to the same tradition, the bride went to the cabin at the back of the inn to visit with the baby and his mother. The building you see here is a replica of the birthplace of Andrew Johnson. It represents an important part of Andrew Johnson's story and speaks of a man who began his life in very humble conditions and later became the 17th president of the United States of America. We are at the National Park Service Museum and Visitor Center for Andrew Johnson. It is arguably a traitor and a patriot at the same time. How can that be so? To the Confederacy and the southern part of the country, which is where he originally from, he's a traitor. He traitored against his people. To the north, he is a patriot. This is his tailor shop prior to becoming a major politician. See how small it is? The floor plan of this building will fit in the average person's kitchen and dining room nowadays. Now, Tommy too, looking at this, on this slapboarding siding, do you see any insulation?
No.
No. And without insulation, does it get cold in this part of Tennessee?
Yes.
Yes. So what will happen when it gets cold? Outside, is it going to stay warm on the inside? No, unless you have a fire. And looking at that fireplace, does that look like it's going to be the type of efficient butt stove that we have now? No. So what does that basically is? It's a fire on the outside, on the inside of the house. And when you're camping or fishing, or you make an outdoor fire, is it warm to get away from it? Or is it warm, you have to snuggle up to it?
You have to snuggle up to it.
So you snuggle up to it, so essentially all you've done is got yourself out of the elements, but not the wind and the atmosphere. So the further you get back here, is it going to be warmer or colder than you get up here?
It'll be colder in the back, warmer in the front.
Colder in the back, warmer in the front. In the summertime, why do they have two doors on it?
The breeze.
The breeze, right. So that becomes a natural form of air conditioning, right? Now look at this windows. Other than what you're seeing now, which they're obviously secured because you can see the nails, right? Are they designed to, both of them designed to lower and raise?
Yes.
Okay, so if you lower the top one on one side and then go to the other side and lower the bottom one, what does that do to the wind flow?
If you lower the top one.
Yep, and leaving the top open,
Okay.
what does heat do?
It rises.
It rises. So if you're pulling the heat out, you want to lower the top one or the bottom one?
You'd want to have the top open. So.
The top open, so it'll pull the heat out. So you have one side pulling the heat, one side bringing in the cool. So in the daytime, do you want to do, when you have the sun out, do you want to do the bottom open on the sun side or the top open on the sun side?
Top.
Yeah, because you want to pull the cold air out from the shadow side to go through. And this is what you're looking at here. This is the average waist size from people from that time period. Look how tiny that coat is. And that's a full-grown man's coat. The average person in that time frame died how far away from where they were born? How many miles? Within 20 miles. Now it's 180. Here's the museum. I'm trying to give you an overview, but not focus in on a lot of it, because you would need to come here and look at it yourself, so that'll give you the ability to look at it and give you a reason to come. How many presidents' houses have you been to, Tommy, too?
I have no clue.
More than one?
Yes.
Now this is the branch of the MPS, which is cool. Back home, and the gorge, not so much. The Senate trial of Andrew Johnson began on March 30th, 1868, with 54 members of the Senate making up the jury. 36 votes, a 2/3 majority, were required to convict. After the articles was described, on March 13th, the Senate gave Johnson's lawyers only a few days to prepare a defense. They had to ask for 40. When the trial resumed, the 7 House members prosecuting the case demanded conviction. The trial mesmerized the nation as it continued through April and into May. Throughout, Johnson's waited calmly at the White House. The verdict. On May 7th, the Senate adjourned to deliberate. As each senator weighed the evidence against Johnson, the power of the presidency and the future of the country lay in the balance. All non-Senate Democrats and 3 moderate Republicans sided with the president. Of the other Republican senators, the radicals counted on 35 sure votes, and they needed 1 more vote. Of 7 undecided senators, all voted to find Johnson not guilty. Senator Edmund G. Ross of Kansas was the last of the 7 to vote not guilty. 1 vote counts. Johnson's acquittal had a great consequences for the future of the United States. Had Johnson been convicted, a dangerous precedent would have been set, allowing for removal of president from the office for trivial reasons such as political unpopularity. Shades of Trump, huh? The final years. Johnson returned to the Greeneville in 1869 after USS Grant was inaugurated, possibly the most corrupt and worthless president the United States ever had, next to, well, modern Democrats. Okay, we are now entering to one of the abodes or abodes of President Johnson prior to becoming president. Here in Greeneville, Tennessee. It is currently 88 degrees and hot. This is the plaque outside. Now we're going to the inside, which is open, and it's directly across from the visitor center. As we enter the building, what can you tell me from just looking at the size of this room?
It's tiny.
Tiny. Tiny compared to which standards?
Nowadays.
Nowadays, why?
Heat.
Heat. So why do they have wood floor going all the way up to the brick?
The brick was to contain the fires.
The fire. So what would happen if you built a fire on top of the wood floor?
Then it's going to catch on fire.
It's going to catch on fire and the house will burn up. Did they have central heat and air like we do now?
No.
No. So this could have been an office space, right? Where some other little room. Look at the size of this fire. Is that going to be sufficient to keep this room?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've got, how many fireplaces have you counted so far?
2.
2. So that means you have to have 2 or twice as much amount of firewood to keep them running, right?
Yes.
Is that an expense?
Yes.
Is that a greater an expense than what most people would have if they're living in a city?
Yes.
Yes, because most places would have how many fireplaces? 1. So now how many are we up to? 3. So you can see you can tell by the kitchenware what socioeconomic classes the person usually is, by the number of fireplaces. How does the smoke leave the house?
Through windows and doors.
How does the smoke leave the house? Up through where?
The chimney.
The chimney. So that chimney extends above the house itself, right? So outside you can count how many fireplaces approximately you're going to have by the number of what? Chimneys. So is that going to tell you that the person could be which socioeconomic class they are? Yes. So was Andrew Johnson poor? Or was he a middling, also known as middle class now? Or is he in the wealthier class like Thomas Jefferson, James Madison?
Seems to be in the wealthier class.
He is upper middle class, or middling as it would be called in that time frame. Because look at the small. Compare this house to Monticello, Montpelier, Poplar Forest. The only one that would be bigger would be Ashland Highland, but it got built on after James Monroe left.